With interesting foliage combinations and an accent on design, this garden in Tampa, Florida shows how big results can be achieved on a small scale. The story of the garden and the gardeners on A Gardener's Diary.
Scott Scherschel and Chip Vogel are interior designers in Tampa, Florida. Working on one area at a time, they've gradually created a small-scale garden that contains distinctive seating areas, a wide variety of foliage plants, and even a fish pond. Their Hyde Park neighborhood has seen many changes over the years, and an old oak in the front of the house is one of the last surviving examples of the trees that used to line these Florida streets. Well, Scott, we're here in Tampa, and just a few blocks from the water. Is that the Tampa Bay?
That's part of the Tampa Bay, yes.
Part of the Tampa Bay.
Right.
And you've got this beautiful oak tree. It looks like a type of oak tree here.
Right, right. This is probably one of the oldest oak trees that's still alive in the neighborhood, and we hope it'll hang on a few more years for us.
And your garden, was it like this when you first got to Hyde Park?
No, actually there was pretty much nothing out here, and the house was renovated completely, so whatever was there was taken out, and it's been kind of a developing process to get to where it is now, certainly.
And your treatment of, instead of having lawn, of having this wonderful glossy evergreen, looks to be a jasmine.
Right, this is jasmine minima. It's worked real well for us. We fought with the turf for several years and
Gave it up.
And grass can be a problem in Florida. Lots of bugs, lots of fungus, and finally last year we got rid of the last of the grass that we had.
Well, it's beautiful, and it sets off the rest of your plants and all that. I like the contrast, and just plants that I see in many northern gardens as houseplants, the Sansevieria or mother-in-law tongue.
Right,
Such an unfriendly common name. But look and work so beautifully here as landscape plants.
They've done well for us. We don't see a lot of those even down here, but they'll grow wonderfully, and of course again it's a nice evergreen plant.
And it sets off your pittosporum. You've got your balance here with some pittosporum on both sides, and the containers really sort of complete the whole entrance. And the crinums, I'm assuming that's a giant crinum of some sort.
Yes, sure is.
Does it get the big fragrant flowers?
You're right, this will get a big kind of a starburst of white flowers. I grew up in southern Indiana, and I'm really attracted to dark green things that do have more of a northern feel. Of course, in Florida, it's hard to find things that really would have grown up north, but I sort of seek out those textures and the dark green, rich colors usually. Actually, about 30 years ago, my family decided to move to Florida, and we moved to Florida on a houseboat, believe it or not. Came down the Ohio River, down the Mississippi River, and across the Gulf of Mexico. And of course, my parents had already been down and scouted a location to settle. So we settled into this little town called Palmetto, Florida. It's just a little bit south of Tampa here, where we are now.
Hyde Park, Seminole Heights, and neighborhoods in South Tampa were primarily the residences of the movers and shakers of the town. The lawyers, doctors, cigar factory owners, shipping magnates. It was really in a state of decline for 25 years, I would say, until the early 70s, mid-70s, and property values started to change. And it's been 25 years of gentrification ever since.
I like the way you've divided up the space back here with the different beds and the raised beds and the gravel. The gravel is just the right size.
Oh.
That's always, it's comfortable, but it makes just enough noise, comfortable to walk on.
As far as the dividing of the areas, really that was almost accidental, because we kind of did the yard in one section at a time.
Tell me a little bit about how long you have been working on it, what it looked like when you started? Because I know that it's been a drastic transformation.
It has, and actually most of the work has been accomplished in about 3 or maybe 4 years. Initial problem was we were just a little bit lower than the alley, and the water kind of would rush down during the rainstorms in the spring and summer and just pool in this low area here in the yard. So to try to eliminate that problem, we decided we wanted to raise up the back area of the lawn. So they were tearing down a piece of property down on Bayshore Boulevard, and we realized that this wall was probably going to be taken out, so we asked if we could salvage it, and we brought it back here and built the wall. And we brought in about 10 yards of dirt to fill in this area in the back, and then the rest of it started taking shape from there. The next part that we did was the brick patio area over there. That used to be a continuation of the driveway down to the garage. We got the bricks or the concrete slabs taken out and put the brick patio in.
That concrete block wall looks as if it's been here forever. That ancient feeling with the moss, and that's the advantage of gardening in Florida.
Right.
Is that you get that
true
humidity, and the time factor is much more.
Yeah,
it's a lot quicker.
It's an advantage for block walls. It can be a disadvantage for plants, but you're right. It's helped, and of course, finding it really elements like that are already old. Really, I think that helps. It really grounds a garden.
That's a good term. It grounds the garden.
Yeah.
Tell me about these tree guards.
For our work, I was doing some shopping at an antique store in Orlando, and they happened to be there, and had no real idea of where I would use them in the yard, but just thought they were so neat that I grabbed them. And
they further accentuate the trees and make columns. Sort of
yeah, and I certainly loved that they were kind of a city park, had a city park feeling to them, so we've enjoyed them being there.
Scott Scherschel and Chip Vogel's home in Tampa, Florida has been through extensive renovation. While Scott takes the lead in the garden, Chip is the main designer for the house, including the most recent addition, the back porch. He also helps out in the garden in a variety of ways.
I tend to carry trash bags a lot. Bags full of limbs and grass and leaves and clippings. I also like to concoct fertilizers. Oh, I suppose every gardener probably has their own recipe. I like to sometimes use fish emulsions and even a good 15-15-15 broad spectrum. I also am a sucker for garden miracles, like a little potion or whatever that's advertised that seems to jumpstart plants. I'm the fella. I'll try it.
This roof line is just right for letting us stand out here and not get wet from the last drops of rain.
Yeah, I've come to appreciate that about bungalow style. They knew what they were doing.
And that's what this house is a bungalow style.
Yes, definitely.
And this trellis that we're standing in front of has this wonderful hook that comes off right off the house.
We wanted to have a cottage look at first, and but then we knew that the house would need painting and cleaning, and it seemed a logical solution.
So
seems to work.
You designed it so that these actually move.
Yes, these will lift off the hooks and set down for painting or whatever. And in the past, we've actually pruned the vines down also, and so it hasn't hurt them at all, but it's proved versatile.
Your porch provides a perfect viewing platform for your garden. You can come out here and survey your kingdom. And did you construct the porch before you started the garden, or did the garden, how did that? Actually,
the porch was the last feature. For years, I had a very narrow concrete step here. It sufficed, but it was awkward.
And I like the caps on top of the
Well, luckily,
columns.
Thank you. We have some good artisans in town here in Tampa, and this was no problem at all for a sheet metal company to put out for us.
Now, what inspired you to use sheet metal and in that color?
Well, it was copper, or is copper, and in no time at all, in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks, they went from a nice bright copper to what you see now, and I'm sure it'll continue to darken. It's become a series of 14 tabletops. We put tools and telephones and everything on top of these.
So they're beautiful to look at and they're functional.
Surprisingly functional. I hate to tell you how much clutter they can hold.
I can't resist touching this. This isn't like a museum, I can touch this.
Absolutely.
One of the great things are the different stages of plants, and this is a fantastic vine, very exotic looking.
This, I believe, is called a tetrastigma. We had grown one in a hanging basket for quite a few years, and then when we brought this planter in, we put one in it also.
Tetrastigma, which I know has also been known as cissus, or grape, one of the grape relatives. In Zone 9 here in Tampa, this is overwinters outside all year. You don't have any problems.
We rarely get a hard freeze here. We have had them, but it's been several years now since we have, and we're pretty lucky. We're kind of in a pocket here too in this part of Tampa where we're protected most of the time.
And I noticed these selections of lacebark elm, the
Drake elms,
Drake elms,
right.
with the bark, and you've pollarded those intentionally.
Yeah, our goal eventually is to get these 3 that have been here for quite a few years and the 2 new ones that we've planted to kind of canopy the area but keep them nice and tight and real full at the tops. They're kind of a neat tree, I think, because of their growth habit. They can be trimmed up and formed, or they can grow really into kind of an elegant shape, almost like an oak tree.
The defined paths and shaped evergreens in this garden in Tampa, Florida, give it a European look. But for Scott Scherschel and Chip Vogel, gardening is more a journey than a destination. Trying out new approaches is just part of the process.
Originally, and there are still a couple of corners that are almost what I would describe, or I hope that I had kind of accomplished a woodland type of a setting, a little bit more wild, a little less control over them. And we have evolved certain areas into a little bit slightly more formalized style, I would say. And I kind of like the combination of the styles. I'm really attracted to the Japanese, very simplistic style, and someday I might like to try my hand at moving more in that direction. So I'm not really sure where we'll go from here.
You've got lots of columns in your garden that you've created both with architectural features and with plants. And these columns of Pandorea jasminoides, I guess, and a variegated selection at that, are with just you almost don't need the flowers with the pretty foliage.
That's true. It's a beautiful plant without the flowers. This is another plant that we're always digging through nurseries, and if I find a plant that I really like, even if I don't necessarily have a place to put it, I'll often grab it and then hope I can find a place to put it later on. That's kind of what happened with these here.
You know, that's the first sign of addiction to gardening.
Uh-oh.
Is if you buy plants without knowing where you're going to put them. You've crossed that line.
Oh my.
But these work really well. Again, you're bringing in another color because you've got so much green in this garden, but just that slight variegation.
They're also really pretty at night with just a little bit of light behind them. It just kind of brings them to life here too.
And that's a great way to treat them with a trellis in the pot, so you don't have to, you can move them around if you want to.
Right.
This viburnum has such a great color. It doesn't look like a lot of viburnums that I know that grow further north.
This is the Viburnum suspensum. It's not really susceptible to much as far as insects. It's very cold hardy. I love the deep green color, the real glossy leaves.
And it's evergreen?
Absolutely. Does have some white blossoms, but they're not really known for that. But it will blossom. I'm definitely more into the plant maintenance than Chip is. He does like to do the fertilizing, and that's a big project down here, certainly. Also, Chip really takes care of the fish.
My duties in the yard are primarily to keep the fish alive as well as I can, and they cooperate pretty easily. They're not demanding. I enjoy it. It's the first thing I do in the morning is before breakfast, come out and commune with the fish.
There's something about water and the sound of water in a garden that adds to that tranquil feeling. Were you seeking to have a water feature right when you started your garden, or was that something that came later?
Actually, it was one of the earlier elements, because this section of the yard would collect with rainwater frequently, and it became logical that if we were going to put a water feature in, this would be the area. Then, of course, Scott does the landscaping, and it is very quickly, this is a 2-year-old pond, and
Wow.
it's very quickly matured.
That just shows in 2 years, especially in a climate like Florida, what you can do. And have there been any surprises? I see you've got koi in your pond.
Actually, the surprise is that we don't have as much frog noise as I thought we would have. We occasionally have it, but I've heard nightmare stories of frogs
keeping people away?
Yeah.
Backgrounds in interior design, Scott Scherschel and Chip Vogel have created a garden in Tampa, Florida that showcases their visual talents. They make the most of their small garden space by using vertical elements like clipped evergreens and tall garden ornaments.
I believe that interior design and landscape design actually can be very similar. I think for us especially, because we had that background, it sort of made it a natural process for us to separate our garden into rooms and then sort of decorate or treat each room a little bit differently, which I think we've done. We've found some great pieces in Maine, actually. The armillary came from a shop in Maine. It's not an old piece, it's just been reproduced to look like an old piece. The obelisk by the pond, we actually found at a local store here. So it's really been all over the place. We have a wonderful garden bench also that is actually a carved limestone bench. And that piece came from the town where I grew up in Indiana, in Bedford.
Everywhere I look in your garden, I see more and more details, and I like the way you use these topiaries and pots, and then you've also got plants trained in bigger pots and just in the ground even. A lot of pruning.
Yeah, that's
shaping.
true. That's true. These are Eugenias. They're a pretty popular plant in this area. They're can be shaped into all sorts of things, which I think is fun. It kind of can add a little bit of whimsy to the garden, but also sort of a little bit of formality too.
And these are evergreen?
They are evergreen, yeah.
And I like the new growth. You get some tinges of red.
Right.
And that shiny, glossy foliage when it comes out.
They even have kind of a little starburst flower and a little fruit on them in the fall.
And are these totally winter hardy?
No, actually, they wouldn't withstand a hard freeze. They would definitely need some protection in the colder weather. But ours have held up in Tampa here for quite a few years with no protection at all.
I think it's important that our environment be harmonious, whether it's interior or exterior, and I try to keep it in mind that people enjoy soothing environments, and though they may not know how to obtain them, they appreciate them when they're in them.
For me, gardening is, and I think for most gardeners, it's what you do to get away from the rest of the world and your work week. I don't think there's any way to make a mistake in your garden, because it really is about pleasing yourself.